My dad passed away recently, and he was only about 23 years older than me, close enough in age that his mortality became a mirror reflecting my own. When you're 16 or 20, the decades stretch ahead like an endless highway. You feel invincible, immortal, like you have all the time in the world to figure things out. But somewhere in middle age, that feeling shifts a little bit. The highway starts to feel shorter, and the question creeps in: why even bother starting something new when the time feels so limited? This is like a middle ager's dilemma. You have experience, resources, and the wisdom that your younger self could have never imagined, but you also have the weight of mortality pressing on your shoulders. It's a cruel irony, and you finally know enough to build something meaningful, but you wonder if you have enough time left to make it worthwhile. The ancient philosopher Epicurus offered a perspective that might seem a little cold, but it's actually liberating. Death is nothing to us. When we are, death is not yet present. And when death is present, we are not. In other words, you don't experience being dead, so there's no rational reason to fear it or to let it paralyze your present actions. But I want to take this idea further. Instead of just accepting mortality, what if we played a different mental game entirely? What if we adopted what I call a 1,000-year frame? Here's a thought experiment. Act as if you're going to live to be 1,000 years old. I know it sounds absurd, ridiculous, but bear with me because this mental shift changes everything. Suddenly, you're not a middle aged person with maybe 30 good years left. You're someone with 950 years ahead of you. Centuries to build, create, learn, and grow. That business idea you've been hesitating about, you have 900 years to see it flourish. That skill that you've always wanted to develop, you have time to become not just competent, but legendary. The 1,000-year frame doesn't require you to actually believe that you'll live that long. It's a mental tool designed to recapture that youthful sense of endless possibility that gets crushed by middle-age mortality awareness. When you adopt a 1,000-year frame, something remarkable happens. The urgency that paralyzes disappears, replaced by patient ambition. You stop asking, do I have enough time? And start asking, what's worth building over centuries? This perspective eliminates the middle-aged trap of only pursuing sure things or quick wins. When you have 900 years ahead of you, you can afford to take calculated risks, experiment with new ventures, and build things that might take decades to fully mature. The timeline pressure that makes middle-agers conservative suddenly evaporates. Here's where the 1,000-year frame becomes powerful rather than just fantasy. You're not actually starting over at middle age, you're entering your prime building years. You have 20, 30, or 40 years of experience, skills, and relationships that 20-year-olds lack. In the 1,000-year frame, this experience becomes the foundation for centuries of compound growth. That network that you've built over decades, in the 1,000-year frame, those relationships are just the beginning of a vast web of connections that you'll develop over centuries. The skills that you've accumulated, they're the base skills that you'll build upon for the next 900 years. The resources that you've gathered, they're seed capital for ventures that will span for centuries. The 1,000-year frame also shifts your perspective on legacy. When you think you might live for 1,000 years, you start caring about the world that you'll inhabit in 500 years. This long-term thinking naturally leads to building things that matter, businesses that solve real problems, creations that add genuine value, and systems that make the world better. You stop building just for immediate personal gain and start building for civilization that you'll supposedly be a part of for centuries. This perspective paradoxically makes your work more meaningful, not less, even though you know you won't actually be around to see most of it. Middle age is actually the perfect time to adopt a 1,000-year frame because you have something that young people lack: wisdom about what doesn't matter. You've lived long enough to know which pursuits are empty, which relationships are valuable, and which goals are worth pursuing. Combined with the 1,000-year timeline, this wisdom becomes incredibly powerful. You can choose to spend the next centuries focused on what truly matters rather than getting distracted by shiny objects or social expectations that trapped you when you were younger. How do you actually use the 1,000-year frame? Start by asking different questions. Instead of, can I build this business before I retire? Ask, what would I build if I had centuries to see it evolve? Instead of, is it worth learning this skill at my age? Ask, what would I want to master if I had another 900 years to practice? This reframing often reveals that the things that you thought were too late or to start are actually perfect projects for someone with centuries ahead of them. Learning a new language, starting a business, developing artistic skills, building relationships, all of these become not just possible but inevitable when you have unlimited time. Strangely, pretending that you'll live forever can make you more motivated to act now, not less. When time feels scarce, we often freeze up, overwhelmed by the pressure to make perfect choice. And when time feels abundant, we can afford to start imperfectly and improve over centuries. The 1,000-year frame gives you permission to begin things that might take 50 years to fully develop, to plant seeds that you might not see flower for decades, to build foundations for structures that will outlast you by centuries. The beautiful irony of adopting the 1,000-year frame is great businesses are built all the time that only take 5 or 10 years to become truly meaningful or profitable. And when you remove the pressure of running out of time, you often move faster and make better decisions, not slower ones. So the middle-aged entrepreneur who thinks that they have centuries ahead of them is more likely to stick with a challenging project through year 3 when it's not working yet because they know they have 900 years left to figure it out. Meanwhile, the middle-aged entrepreneur who thinks they only have 20 years left might quit after 18 months because time is running out. The 1,000-year frame gives you the persistence to push through the difficult middle years of building something meaningful. Most great businesses don't fail because the idea was bad. They fail because the founder gave up too early. And when you have unlimited time, giving up becomes much harder to justify. My dad's passing reminded me that none of us actually know how much time we have. But the uncertainty is exactly why the 1,000-year frame is so powerful. Whether you have 20 years or 50 years left, adopting the mindset of someone with 900 years changes how you approach every day. You stop treating middle age as the beginning of the end and start treating it as the end of the beginning. Your real building years aren't behind you, they're ahead of you, stretching out like an endless horizon of possibility. What would you build if you had 1,000 years? Start building it today. The irony is that by thinking that you have forever, you might just create something remarkable within the next decade. Time may be finite, but your capacity to create something meaningful is limited only by the frame you choose to see it through. And honestly, if you had 5 years or 900 years, what's the difference? Later on.